Hello, listeners. I'm Dr. Nate Pinnell, and we're excited to announce the premiere of the ASCO Educational Book Podcast, By the Book. Be on the lookout for our first episode on Monday, April 14th, and come back every month for more episodes from ASCO Education by the Book, where we'll cover education sessions at ASCO meetings and approaches shaping modern oncology.
The First Hero by Christopher Kim, B.S. When he is like this, eyes closed, face still, he is unfamiliar. He wears a face younger than usual, fragile limbs washed in fluorescent light, eyes blurred with a diagnosis, or ripe hyacinths, or the last words we shared. Be good, son. Be bright. When he is still, anesthetized into memory, so too are the aphids in the garden. Lines of buzzing bodies descended from flight, but clustered in quiet surrender. Fathers of sons who are trying to heal, who are failing, who retreat into the silence of sterile rooms. A heartbeat stutters, and everything sings, like the birds we watch outside the ICU window. How they peck at unyielding concrete and fill themselves with sharpness. Their bodies frenzied, their bodies temporary.
Hello, and welcome to JCO's Cancer Stories, The Art of Oncology, which features essays and personal reflections from authors exploring their experience in the oncology field. I'm your host, Mikkael Sekeres. I'm professor of medicine and chief of the Division of Hematology at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, University of Miami. Today, I am so thrilled to be joined by Christopher Kim. He's a research assistant at the Institute for Stem Cell Biology and Regenerative Medicine at Stanford University. In this episode, we will be discussing his Art of Oncology poem, The First Hero. At the time of this recording, our guest has no disclosures. Both he and I have agreed to address each other by first names during the podcast. Chris, welcome to our podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's just an honor, I think.
We absolutely loved your poem. It was incredible and addressed the topic I think a lot of us face at some point in our lives, and that's when we see a family member who's sick. Before we get into that, I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and how did you get to this point?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm, as you mentioned before, I'm working as a research assistant at the Stanford Medical School, and I pretty much only recently graduated from college. So I feel like I'm still in this like in between stage. I'm a Bay Area native. I went to Stanford for undergrad, just kind of stayed on with the lab that I worked with while I was in undergrad. I would like to go on to medical school in the future. I'm learning a lot working as a research assistant, getting some hands-on experience with basic biology research. And another thing about myself is I'm an avid musician, play violin, play guitar, I like to sing. And of course, I really enjoy writing as well.
That's a great background. Well, we definitely need more doctors who are writers, musicians, and singers. So you fit that bill. And then the fact that you do some lab-based research is just amazing. You sound like a polymath.
Oh, I don't know about that. I try my best, but
Can you tell us a little bit about your own story as a writer? How long have you been writing poetry? When did you get started? And how did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always written sort of on my own. So I don't think I ever had the courage to share my writing with others because it's kind of a vulnerable thing to share your inner thoughts with someone. So I have been kind of writing on my own since maybe like late middle school and early high school. That's when I started putting my thoughts onto paper. But I only recently started to submit my poetry to, these journals because, after a while I was thinking, and I think they're worth sharing with others because maybe some people may be going through similar situations where they can feel a little bit encouraged by the words that I write in terms of, feeling the emotions that they feel.
Well, lucky for us, you made that decision. So when you were an undergrad, did you take any writing courses? Because it's interesting. You've been in the area of writing since you were in middle school, high school, that must have continued through college. And sometimes formal courses help us refine those skills, but then there are also plenty of examples of people who just did it on their own.
Absolutely. The main writing courses I took, funnily enough, they weren't really creative writing courses. They were more like rhetoric based, or like kind of just like the regular English writing classes that college undergraduates take. However, I did have a group of friends who I would share my writing with. I think that was like the most important part of my sort of evolution as a writer, because before I would just kind of write on my own and maybe kind of hide it away, in my little locked box, I guess. But then having this opportunity to meet to meet other people my age, my peers, who I finally gained enough kind of courage to. I say courage, but I really mean like I finally gained enough comfort to share it with them, and gaining their feedback and seeing their response was really the most important part of, I think, my writing in college. So not necessarily like formal classes, but more like the people I met and how they responded to my writing, which is really, I am really thankful for them.
It's so interesting because there is this temptation to be like Emily Dickinson and write your poems and squirrel them away in your desk and never show them to anyone. And then, the body of your work is discovered posthumously, which I think is kind of sad.
Yeah.
I mean, great that we have Emily Dickinson poetry, but it would have been nice that, she had known how appreciated she was during her lifetime.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the hardest first step is that word that you use, courage, the courage to identify people outside of ourselves to share our poetry with or our narrative pieces. So, how did you find those people?
It's often the case that, you make your closest friends when you kind of struggle together. So I think a lot of these friends I met were through taking courses together that were difficult, and that sort of combined, I don't want to say misery, that's maybe too strong a word, but in a combined struggle against one common goal. I think that's when we started becoming close. And then it was like outside of a writing context, but I think, I don't know, it's like part luck and part finding these people in these classes and then having conversations with them late at night, and then eventually going towards sharing your arts, whatever. Some of them are musicians, they share their music. Some of us share our writing.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's that shared experience of being in difficult situations. I think a lot of us who've gone through undergrad and med school and then became doctors and started our training, we have incredibly close friends we met in our residencies and fellowship because those were major stressor points in our lives and major transitional phases also when we felt that we grew. The other aspect that I've heard in identifying people to be first readers of your poetry or prose is to identify people you trust, people who are friends, will give you a good read, will be appropriately critical, and will also be encouraging. You need those people to feed back to you truth about the quality of your writing and provide substantive criticism that helps you grow as a writer.
Definitely agree. You found your true friends when they're not afraid to criticize you, because they're so close to you and they really want you to be better. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. And those who will take it seriously, where I think plenty of times in my own life where I've given a piece of writing to somebody hoping for good feedback, and then you feel like you have to hound them to finally get that feedback. And obviously they're not invested in it as opposed to a trusted body of readers where they are going to take it seriously. They're going to read it closely, and then they're going to get back to you without you feeling as if you're imposing on them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very valuable if once you've found that group of people and of friends, and I still contact them regularly today. So yeah, as you mentioned, I think it's definitely like maybe a lifelong process or a lifelong friendship where you can always go back to them for sort of that support. And you also are able to provide that support for your friends too.
Yeah. I'm curious about your writing process. What triggers you to start a poem? And, how do you face that dreaded blank page?
Bay Area traffic can be very long and the commute can be pretty rough.
Not at all like that in Miami, by the way. In Miami, we just breeze through traffic. Yeah, not at all.
I would love to visit someday to compare. But yeah, Bay Area traffic can be pretty rough. As much as I love podcasts and music, there comes a point where you kind of run out of things to listen to after a while. So I really found myself driving along, but then letting my thoughts wander. And funnily enough, that's when my creative inspirations hit. Maybe it's because there's something about driving that's like the perfect amount of not thinking, it's like a automatic process, and that lets your, obviously I'm paying attention to the road, but uh, but you kind of let your mind wander through creative thoughts, and that's one place of creative inspiration. I've had close family members who have struggled with cancer specifically and other serious health issues, and I've had experiences being a caretaker for them, like the first hero. The being in that position really inspires you to write, I think, for me.
So I wonder if I could follow up on that. And if you're comfortable doing so, can you tell us what prompted you to write The First Hero?
So it's kind of a combination of experiences. My grandfather struggled with cancer for a long time, and eventually he passed away from cancer.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And he had cancer when I was a young child, which luckily went into remission for a couple of years. But then later on, as I started college, that's when it came back, and that's when he passed. And I think seeing his struggles with cancer, that was one big part of the inspiration for this poem. But also another thing was my father also went through some health issues where he had to go through surgery and a long period of recovery, and he still kind of struggles with some issues today. And seeing people that you love that much in a position where it's really hard, especially when they're father figures in your life, they're your grandfather and your father. And, when you're a kid, your dad is like your superhero. Your dad is the hero who can do anything, who can answer any question you have, who can build anything you want, can buy you things, all that stuff. But now seeing them in this reverse state of being vulnerable and not being able to do much, it really affected me. And those two experiences were my main inspiration for this poem.
That was really beautifully said, Chris. I'm a parent of 3, and I think that it comes with a lot of responsibility to remember that just carrying the title of mom or dad implies so much to one of your own children that you have to remember the import of everything that you do for them, for your kids, and everything that you say. And it carries just that much added significance because of the role we play as parents. It's so interesting to hear it enunciated by you in that way as well. And I think part of what makes good parents, there are 1,000 things that go into the formula of a good parent. And we only know for sure if we made it if, depending on the amount of therapy our kids have to go through when they're older, right?
Right.
I think part of that, though, is remembering the great responsibility that comes with just simply the title of being a parent.
Absolutely.
You started to talk a little bit about this. I'm curious about how the dynamic between parents and children change when a parent is sick.
Yeah. It's kind of a reversal of roles in a way, because your parents, when you're born, you're the most vulnerable. They're responsible for sort of ushering you into this world, keeping you alive. Seeing your parents grow older and seeing them aging is a tough experience. And my mom often tells me whenever she would see her parents after a while, in her mind, she still sees her parents as when they were their younger selves, when she was younger. But then suddenly it would hit her that they're like much older. And that also makes you feel a little bit more aware of how you are aging and how much older you are. So at the end of the day, they're always going to be your parents.
They really aren't. Our parents age and we age with them, and we evolve in how we view parents. And we all go through this. And I don't think it ever ends until your parents pass. I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's a saying that you never really become an adult until your parents pass.
You mentioned that you're more aware of what parenthood is as you get older. I mean, obviously, I don't have any kids myself, but I'm sure my parents always say to me, you understand when you have kids.
You sort of do. You sort of do.
I sort of, right? Exactly.
My dad always said to me that parenting is unskilled labor. So you sort of get it. When you're a parent, you're still really figuring it out.
Absolutely, yeah. And the older I get, it's like I realize, I think I've gained more appreciation for the sacrifices my parents have made for me. And I've definitely taken their parenthood lessons to heart. for whenever, if I choose to have kids later on. So
That's great. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to hear that, Chris. I wanted to end with one last question for you. Are there poets who've been a particular influence on you or favorite poets you want to name?
one name kind of comes to mind is there's a poet named Ocean Vuong. Their work blends together personal history and like family history with beautiful lyricism. They always feel like musical in a way. Their words kind of often linger on with you long after.
It's great. Well, listen, Chris Kim, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast and for your absolutely beautiful poem, The First Hero.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super thrilled to be on. This is my first podcast ever. So it was such a great experience. I felt so welcomed. So thank you for, hearing my thoughts or listening to my thoughts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you're good at them. Keep them up. Until next time, thank you for listening to JCO's Cancer Stories, The Art of Oncology. Don't forget to give us a rating or review, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find all of ASCO shows at asco.org/podcasts. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. This is not a substitute for professional medical care and is not intended for use in the diagnosis or treatment of individual conditions. Guests on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Guest statements on the podcast do not express the opinions of ASCO. The mention of any product, service, organization, activity, or therapy should not be construed as an ASCO endorsement.